Hello and welcome to another episode of the DigiTeacher podcast. I've been talking quite a lot about technology in the computer classroom over the last year or so, but my other hat is as an English teacher. So over the course of my career, for all but a couple of years, I've always taught English, either second language or home language. And it's really where my heart is, I think. So technology in the English classroom. Well, in many ways, the first thing to say about that is if you think about the study of literature, the dominant methodology is probably practical criticism, Prac-Crit, which was developed, I believe, in about the 1920s at Cambridge under I.A. Richards, and it basically represents a close analysis of the text. So instead of approaching literature from a kind of this is what it is, the teacher will tell you all about it, you sit a class down and the class looks at the text and examines the text and derives meaning from the text. You can, of course, add in facts about the poet or the writer, about the times, the context, and things like that. But predominantly it's a close analysis of the text. And what you do is you're helping to train students to read texts. It's very much a Noah gaze, if you're thinking in legitimation code theory terms. So what technology assists this? What technology affords this kind of approach in the teaching of literature? Well, probably if you think about technology, what often gets overlooked is that pedagogies are also technologies, they're educational technologies. And the best way of analyzing a text is through discussion. So very much the Socratic method, I think, is what dominates most English classrooms when teaching literature. You are working through a text with a class, you're talking to the class, you're modeling the approach as much as anything else. But more than that, you're getting, increasingly you're getting students to come up with their own insights. And you're encouraging that, and you're encouraging students to bounce ideas off each other. So pretty much the dominant technology is the Socratic method, is very much talk. But there are a couple of technological applications that I think are useful as kind of add-ins. The majority of what you do is going to be Socratic, but you probably will want to throw in technology now and then. So Google Images, for example, if you're looking at poems and you want to, or any kind of literary text, and there's a word which isn't understood, pretty much what you want to do is create an image of that. So in the days before the internet, I used to draw on the whiteboard. So, for example, looking at a poem like Emily Dickinson's I Dwell in Possibility, where she talks about the gambrels of the sky. Well, what on earth is a gambrel? It's a meat hook. It has a particular shape to it, a double-angled shape, and that is also the angle of the roof in a typical New England house. So it has a gambreled roof. I'm not an architect, so that's my understanding of it. And one of the best ways to show this to students, because gambrel is not a word that's very common in their vocabulary, is to use Google Images. And then what you see is images of meat hooks and of roofs, the pictures of the roof. And you can kind of abstract the idea out very nicely by looking at a range of images like that. So Google Images is a very useful technology to have on hand during your discussion. You come across a word like gambrel and you need to explain it. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and Google Images can really assist in that way. So I like to have my interactive whiteboard open, and so I can switch between using it as a whiteboard, writing on it, drawing things, diagramming or what have you, but to be able to just switch over to Google and just Google an image, and you can you can demonstrate, you can show to students kind of exactly what is being talked about. Another instance is looking at Christina Rossetti, and she wrote a sonnet about her brother's muse, and her brother, of course, was a painter, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and he used a particular model for kind of all of his, most of his works, and this is described in Rossetti's poem. And to be able just to switch on Google Images and show that model, and you can see the kind of image that Rossetti is talking about in her poem very, very clearly. I think another use for technology is when you want students to produce. So I have to say that pretty much Google Images and talk when I'm teaching literature is the extent of my use of technology. I don't often do more than that. Unless it's to show a clip. So, for example, when talking about The Merchant of Venice, there's a lovely clip where David Suchet and Patrick Stewart discuss different approaches to playing Shylock, and whether the play is anti-Semitic and so on. And it's a very useful clip, as a discussion piece. So yes, I do use YouTube videos for that purpose. But beyond YouTube videos and Google Images, when teaching literature, that's the extent. I don't use technology more than that, because talk is so much a superior technology for that purpose. But when you want students to produce something, so for example, if they've been studying a piece of literature and you want them to explore some of the themes, the characters and so forth, you might get them to produce a product, whether it's a kind of a fake newspaper. So Merchant of Venice, the Venetian Times, what would the press be saying about all these events? And you can kind of explore that. If you want to produce where they're giving their thoughts and reactions, I've had another video on this podcast series about The Merchant of Twitter, which was a Twitter play around the events of the Merchants of Venice. So if you want students to produce, of course, the students using technology is very useful, even if it's just a simple PowerPoint. If you want students to explore the imagery of a particular poem or play or something like that, getting them to capture images and create collages where the images try to capture the spirit of the work of art. So, William Blake, for example, springs to mind here. Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. It's all about energy. And so getting students to create a collage of energetic images, I think is quite useful to get across the point to them that behind an image in a poem is a mood, a feeling, an idea, and images just express ideas. They express mood and convey feelings and emotions and ideas. And to explore how images do that, you could get students to actually produce images around what does this poem make you think of. Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, it might make you think of a Ferrari, and so on. So using technology for student production, whether it's video production or PowerPoints or even using Word or online platforms to create fake newsletters and things like that. I think those are nice little projects when you come to the end of a play, for example, and you want to explore students' own reactions to that, above and beyond the meaning of the play. So in terms of teaching literature, I would say that is my major approach. I don't think technology is particularly useful other than for student expression. When it comes to language, however, it's a different matter. By language, I mean the use of language when you're teaching grammatical use, either for talking or for writing, and for comprehending text, summarizing texts, all of those kinds of things. Technology can be very, very useful. Again, the spoken word in the classroom is a very powerful technology, and I don't want to take away from that. I think kind of the classic English technique for this, what you find mostly in an English classroom, is the printed worksheet that goes out to students, and then students will work through exercises, for example, changing past tense to future tense, or doing error correction, changing active to passive voice, whatever it is. The worksheet is the kind of workhorse of the English classroom, but you can keep a certain amount of that. Worksheets are very flexible because you can design them around a class's particular needs, and because you have control over the creation of that technology more than you have over some digital technologies, you can tailor worksheets quite nicely. But digital, brings in both video, YouTube videos. It brings in podcasts and things like that are very useful for comprehension and for kind of error correction. Take a text, reformat it so it's got spaces in between, and get a classroom to come up to the interactive whiteboard, and using the write over functions, get them to correct the mistakes in a passage. I like to have, while teaching writing, to have students in groups writing together and correcting, so that they get used to working with each other to do editing, not only grammatical corrections, but also in terms of the meaning of the piece and how it's written, how to strategize your writing and things like that. So digital technologies, I think, are very, very useful for for stand-ins for the kind of classic English worksheet. When it comes to writing, another key use of digital technologies is things like blogs. So if you get students to create their own blogs, it has a sense of being real, being authentic, which brings a lot into the classroom. It forces students to be far more accurate and to pay a lot more attention, because they know that what they're producing is published. Producing class magazines and things like that is all made a lot easier online, and has that sense of authenticity and reality, which I think is very, very valuable. Another use is Google Docs. If you have a shared document where students can write at the same time and can edit each other's writing, that is absolutely crucial. So I was talking earlier about kind of writing circles, where you get kids to write together and bounce ideas off each other, correct each other's work. Well, Google Docs enables that in key ways. It used to be a bit of a pain. Students would have to produce the writing, you'd have to photocopy it and give it, a copy to each member of the group so that they could read each other's work and edit it. Being able to do all of that online makes it a lot more seamless and a lot more valuable. It enables the teacher as well, so that as students are writing, you can go in and leave comments for advice and so on as the writing is unfolding. And that's quite a dynamic and exciting process, being able to before, students would have to write something on a piece of paper and then hand it to you before you'd kind of be able to intervene. And by that time, it's often too late. They've done too much writing. Whereas if you're sitting with a class and you're able to go into documents and just leave kind of pithy little comments, you can kind of help them and guide them as the writing is unfolding. And I think that's quite an exciting process. I think one final use of technology that, in my experience, not a lot of English teachers think about is if you're doing something like film studies or advertising or things like that, you can use online platforms for setting your assessments. For example, a Google quiz or Microsoft quiz can be set up to have open-ended questions or multiple choice questions, any type of question really, and you can embed video clips. So you could have if you're studying a particular movie, you could take a clip from the movie, embed that in the question, and then ask a question around that. And that's a very powerful way of assessing something like film studies, where you really want to engage with the movie as movie, rather than perhaps more abstract questions about it. So using Google Forms or Microsoft Forms and quizzes in that way can be a very powerful addition to your normal testing regimen. Another aspect, one final one, is the use of forums. So forums are somewhere where you can set up an online platform and you can get people to hold discussions, and you can have people discussing a particular text, a movie, for example, that they're studying, or an image, breaking it down, trying to understand it. And you can make it compulsory for students to leave a certain number of comments, to reply to other people's comments. But it's a very powerful asynchronous way to hold discussions in the kind of homework space. So I've looked at in this particular podcast, I think a few uses of technology in English that I've used. I'm sure there are many, many more that I've missed that are very powerful. So, and I know that not a lot of English teachers tend to use technology, or certainly not the ones I know, but it can be a very powerful addition to your armory. If you've enjoyed this particular podcast, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and leaving comments. It really does help to spread conversations around educational space, and particularly around the use of technology in education, which is my passion. So bye for now, and I'll see you in the next podcast.